to use treaties and covenants that are binding to gather nations around who, and have them by binding treaty give up their healthcare system, in particular in regard to preparing for, getting ready for, and developing responses for the epidemic, but it's on coming epidemics, but it's on such a wide scale and involves so much of the preparation that it's a virtual giving over of the health control of the nations to the World Health Organization.
Now, even as some governments seem to be backing off their COVID-19 restrictions and their protocols, it's time to beware, because it looks like plans are in the works for a global health takeover. Joining me today is going to be Dr. Peter Breggin. He is known as the conscience of psychiatry for his many decades of successful work in the mental health field, reforming that. But he's definitely turned his attention to the misuse of science surrounding the COVID-19, that whole narrative. He and his wife are authors of COVID-19 and the Global Predators, We Are the Prey. This is one of the most comprehensive and thorough books on the planned pandemic and everything that has happened since. And it's and how this pandemic has been used to control our lives and cost countless lives. So Dr. Peter Breggin, thank you. Welcome to KLIM.news. That's Christy Lee Independent Media. Thank you for being here. This is it. I'm amazed at how much you've just relentlessly sought the truth, and you just continue to uncover more sinister things happening. And right now you're uncovering what looks to be plans for a new world health order.
Yes, I think that the global predators, and we describe in the book, have been so pleased with the performance of the World Health Organization, which is basically a department of the Chinese Communist Party. We all remember how they covered up for the Chinese and said it wasn't a release from China or from a lab. And then they allowed China to just spread the virus throughout the world in its airplanes, passenger planes, saying that it wasn't dangerous. And then how Trump finally withdrew financial support from WHO, and then how Bill Gates stepped in. So think of Bill Gates, who was very, very close to Xi Jinping. Think of Xi Jinping, who was largely, if not solely, responsible for Tedros being made the first non-physician, non-medical head of the World Health Organization. Tedros is essentially a Marxist criminal type of guy who has served the powers that be was in his career. And even when he was first appointment was first brought up uncontested by the Chinese, there was considerable blowback, but then it eventually disappeared. Well, I think that now that, as you correctly opened, as things are beginning to look like maybe they can't push too much further on the pandemic, there's too much fighting back going on in Canada and around the world. It's so clear now that the variations on the virus are quite innocuous in general. They're certainly not killing very many people. You know, what's their next step? They've experimented with reviving climate change. That was Bill Gates's newest book, but that's not working. And I think, well, I know actually, finally, what their plan is going to be. On January 24th of this year, just a couple of weeks ago, Tedros spoke to his executive committee of the World Health Organization, and then by Zoom with many of its many dozens of national affiliates around the world, and described to them something that he had in the works for several months, at least, really, for we can track it back about a year. And the plan is to use treaties and covenants that are binding to gather nations around who, and have them by binding treaty give up their healthcare system, in particular in regard to preparing for, getting ready for, and developing responses for the epidemic, but it's on coming epidemics, but it's on such a wide scale and involves so much of the preparation that it's a virtual giving over of the health control of the nations to the World Health Organization. Now, this would sound so crazy that you would think that most nations, certainly democratic nations, would not support it. But this actually has the support of Emmanuel Macron from France. It has Boris Johnson from Great Britain supporting it. It has Angela Merkel from Germany supporting it, and in many other nations. And in fact, it has the blessings now of the European Union. A man named Charles Michel, who is the head of the European Council, is a policy setting body, is president of the European Council for the European Union. And they've thrown in completely with the idea of working with WHO. And this appears on many websites that I cite in my report. This report is now up on America Out Loud. America Out Loud has this report up with all of the documentation that one could want.
Yeah, and you go very detailed into this. It's quite shocking that even in America, there has been resistance to a universal health care, but it's like they're bypassing that. And they're like, no, we're just going to introduce and implement a global universal health care. And what this amounts to, I guess break it down. Like, why should this be scary? Like, what is the harm in them trying to coordinate and bring this in?
Well, the harms are many. Let me first, as well, to display the harms, give you the words of Tedros. Some of them are quite amazing, and this is from his presentation to his own executive council, executive committee, and basically to the world. He talks about 5 priorities, and the 5th is the most important. The 5th priority is to urgently strengthen WHO as the leading directing authority on global health, comma, at the center of the global health architecture. Let me read that again. The 5th priority is to urgently strengthen WHO as the leading and directing authority on global health at the center of the global health architecture. And this is, of course, what they have somewhat done with COVID-19, WHO has been very key in organizing all the various health journals to lie about the origin of COVID-19, to exonerate the Chinese communists. Lancet, supposedly the most prestigious of the journals, the oldest in the world out of Great Britain, actually published a letter that was organized by Fauci and the Eco Health Alliance, saying that we had to be in solidarity, that kind of communist term, solidarity with the Chinese communist researchers and scientists, that they were all good people. Well, all those good people are working in the Biological Warfare Institute for the Communist Chinese, the Wuhan Institute. It is literally run by their top biomedical researcher in the field of weaponry. And then he closes his same report with something that is just so stunning. Imagine a dictator, which is essentially what he's looking to be, but he'll just be the dictator for Bill Gates and Klaus Schwab and mostly communist China. But imagine a man standing up and announcing this to a roaring crowd in one of the Hitler films. These are the words of Tedros, the Director General of WHO. We are one world. We have one health. We have one WHO. And if you want to carry that out to the extreme, you can imagine the crowd responding, with chants of who, or something bizarre like that. And this is what we're facing now. They not only have support from the European Union, this concept of One Health, where they say we are One Health. One Health is a code word for exactly what you picked up on. So beautiful, Christy. It's a code for the universal global health care. And our CDC has also picked up on this exact term of One Health. And I'll read you a little bit from the CDC, which puts up for the public a kind of an introductory platform to One Health. The CDC says One Health is the idea that the health of people is connected to the health of animals and our shared environment. Now, this sounds cool, but think about the implications. This is how we got the snail darter. Do you remember that a couple of decades ago? The progressives got the courts to stop a huge dam building project to bring more water to the southwest U.S. on the grounds that it was going to interfere with a particular snail's development that was indigenous to that area. This is how they use it. And then you look below, and you may have it up on the screen now. When we protect one, we protect all. And you might reverse it and say, when we protect all, we protect one. And
Mm-hmm.
but what they mean by protect is control. And you've
Mm-hmm.
seen how they must vaccinate all. We must vaccinate every one of the children to protect all. That's what this becomes. So it really becomes, when we control one, we control all. When we control all, we control one. This is the kind of thinking that they so love and admire about communist China. When
And I
Bill
mean, and then
Gates,
these aren't conspiracy theories. We hear it straight from their lips. I mean, obviously, everything that's going on in Canada right now, and him being Trudeau being part of that little club and saying how much he admires China and how things would be easier under a dictatorship. It's not like these folks are hiding it. And the thing is we saw it happen. This is part of, I think, what woke a lot of people up, is that they noticed, wait, all of these countries are acting the same. It looks like in coordination, and they're all giving the same response and protocols, even though in many cases that was not saving lives and that was not the best plan of action. And so basically what you're saying is it wasn't enough, even though it looks like they're going to pull back some of these restrictions. This was the foundation. They were building the bricks to bring this in.
yeah, I think this is the stealth ultimate usurpation. What is that word? Anyway, they're going to usurp the governments of the world. They've got such backing. Brazil has also lent their strength to this, and Portugal, and then a number of the less developed nations. But that they have so many of the wealthy Western nations that are supposed to believe in individual freedom, which we now know they do not anymore believe in, to whatever extent they did. Um, the U.S. could be facing a block of universal global medicine that involves the EU, the entire European Union, including Great Britain, and that involves India and Brazil and other major nations around the world. And of course, Canada, if the truckers don't win, God bless them, folks. Give your support to the truckers. If I were a young man, I think I'd be sneaking across the border to
I
go
know you
help the
would. I know
trucker.
you would, Dr. Reagan.
But I can't do it at 85. But I can encourage them with all my heart. Um, we'll be surrounded by this kind of a system, and then of course we have progressivism eating us from the inside out. And I don't think that Joe Biden and his managers would skip a beat signing on to this. Now, the way these treaties work, I've been researching that. The treaties or accords, virtually their basic agreements, are binding, and the international courts consider them binding. And they don't, under the UN Charter. Remember, this is a part of the UN. This is the dream of the world order, but under this very corrupt UN, which will be run essentially by the Chinese communists. Let me put that in, that when when Bill Gates, Klaus Schwab, Michael Bloomberg, and all the other predators, when they succeed in weakening America, which is Klaus Schwab's stated policy, and especially the part of America that Trump represented, specifically stated by Klaus Schwab in his book COVID-19 and the Great Reset, then China will be in ascendance. And they all have been openly looking forward to one year or another. They keep predicting China will be in ascendance economically. That, of course, will mean militarily. Think of that world where China's guarding the sea lanes, not us, where China's trying to behave like the world's policeman instead of us. And we've done it badly. They will do it well. They will police and control the world. They have a tradition of empires and Marxism combined, which is about the most terrifying thing. So I think what would happen is people like Bill Gates and Schwab, with all their money and connections, I mean, the Chinese would just do away with their currencies. I mean, the Chinese will do anything. They have no restraints. They literally have a concept of unrestricted warfare that they're conducting against America now. So they would gobble up Bill Gates and Schwab and the whole Davos group with ease. And that's where we're heading if we don't stand up and fight this. And they will start implementing. They're aiming at. They've stated they want to implement the treaty starting in 2024, 2 years from now or less. They want to start implementing these, and they're working on the treaty processes now.
Well, unless they manufacture another crisis and they are able to push it forward, because I believe a lot of the research has shown that maybe they weren't going to pull this whole COVID-19 thing on us until later, but it looks like they pulled the trigger and here we are. But the other thing about this is—
That's important, Christy. Can I
pick up on that?
Yeah, that's really, really important. That is something that Ginger and I have been talking about for a while. We go into some detail in it in in our book COVID-19 and the Global Predators. It was going to be the decade of vaccines, and they were planning sometime, therefore, around the 2021-22 time to bring out, I believe, an epidemic one way or another. They knew the Chinese had 4 leaks of SARS-CoV viruses years ago, literally making them in their labs, toying with them, because there'd been an outbreak in 2003 and 4 in China, and they had the virus. We don't know whether it came out of nature. There's no proof of that. Most likely came out of their labs back then. And so they had this, and they were working on it, and they wanted to do everything indicates from reports out of China that they wanted to use biological warfare as a stealth attack, not necessarily to destroy the world, but to somehow place them ahead of America, way ahead of time. But no one expected Donald Trump. Remember that. None of us expected his victory. And it was a huge victory. And when he took over, he immediately set about fulfilling every single promise that he'd made. He closed the border. He took on the Chinese. He put tariffs on them in return for how they were manipulating us in the trade. He brought back corporations to America, which meant America again surpassing China greatly. And our unemployment, which had always been poor, especially for our poor people, because of the open borders, because of shipping industries to China and Indonesia, North Vietnam, and so on. He reversed all of that. We had the highest employment ever for every minority group, women, blacks, Hispanics, in history, highest employment. And this meant the end of the global predators and the end of China's dominance. I think China released the COVID-19 from one of its facilities in Wuhan. Doesn't even have to be the institute. They have several places that are working on them around Wuhan. And then people say, well, why would they do this to their own people? Under Chairman Mao, through Xi Jinping, the Chinese have probably killed 100 million or more of their own people. They are the most mass murderous group toward their own people of anyone in history. This has never been a problem to them. And if they see you as expendable or an ethnic minority, they have no problem of killing you or putting you in concentration camps and making slave labor out of you and harvesting your organs. I mean, we have to face, these are the people we're dealing with, folks. You must face this. Well, the China had a huge economic problem, which the virus solved for them. Too many old people and too few young people. And they knew this virus. I pointed this out way back in March in my video and my our blogs back in 2020 in the early months that that they knew the SARS-CoV virus in the lab was killing older animals who were compromised, but remarkably, unlike flu and other similar viruses, was not killing children, infants, young adults even. It was the seriously impaired. Well, for China to have a weapon that they could use against the world to exaggerate its power through WHO, big deal through WHO, which then influenced all the medical people around the world. They could shut down the world by threatening them with something that was not as dangerous as they said. And they could get rid of their old people and find an excuse for locking them up and starving them to death in buildings and bolting their doors closed and doing all these horrendous things, which, by the way, the Epoch Times, EPOCH Times, newspaper by Chinese dissidents in the U.S., no place documents what's going on with China like the Epoch Times, and we get that delivered as well as on email. So there was a reason to precipitously get this thing out in the world before full preparations were in, because otherwise Trump was going to win the next election. They were also fiddling with the election results. They were doing lots of things to stop Trump. Many things. They were deplatforming him, and all these things were going on. And a part of it, this was one part of it, was to release the virus before the election.
Well, that rush to market is ultimately, I think, what served as a beacon for us to find the information and find all the holes that they weren't able to hide or cover up. And so, we can be thankful that they had to rush, because now it just makes it so apparent what they were up to. But what I was going to say about this fear of control of healthcare, a global universal healthcare, is that beyond just the fear of someone else being able to make your health decisions, it also bring in, or have shown other countries and things that have tried to do this on a smaller scale, lead to rationed healthcare and more expensive healthcare?
Yes, even under what might be thought of as the best of opportunities, which was Canada, people ended up coming down here to get decent health care and to not have to wait a year for some sort of a nearly life-saving or pain-reducing operation. The problem is that centralized anything does not work. It has never worked. No empire has succeeded once it has become gigantic and centralized, and they want to do one empire of the world centralized. That doesn't work. You have to have a large degree of freedom of people to work out their issues more locally, on state levels, on national levels. That was the genius of our Constitution and our Bill of Rights, which allowed America in no time to become the dominant nation in the world and the most productive and the best place to live, even for African Americans, which many of them have made so clear by supporting America, returning to America, and then fighting to get rid of Jim Crow in America rather than leaving America, because they knew the American dream was real, that people could have it, and they wanted it too, and they had the right to, and they got it. And inequality always exists in the world. It cannot be eradicated by having an international force. the biggest international force right now is communist China, and they've got concentration camps, for God's sakes. So we can't go in that direction, and so it's going to fail. And the
Well,
goal
we're
is
getting
to
sneak
fail.
peeks. I mean, what is happening in Canada is
You know,
so frightening. Freezing bank accounts, brazenly saying that if someone is a Trump supporter, they can freeze the bank account. So this doesn't have to do with an occupation. This doesn't have to do with any violence or violent rhetoric. This has to do with, they've said it, politics. And the fact that they're just able to attack even the cryptocurrencies and the threatening of the freezing of the banks, and now they're even saying that if someone is arrested and they had an animal with them, a pet, they can seize the pet. They're taking people's pets now. I mean, this is insane. We're getting a sneak peek of what this move from in the Western countries, this move into totalitarianism looks like, and it is going fast and furious in Canada. And so this doesn't surprise me that they're trying to now take over and control and create a global health takeover. But it's scary. One of the lines that I wanted to point out in your article that is now on America Out Loud is you say Tedros seeks to become super Fauci for the world, and like Fauci, he will do it on behalf of the global predators. So that hasn't really worked out very well for Fauci, but are they following the same plan?
well, Fauci was following the same plan. Fauci is a puppet of Bill Gates. People don't realize that as far back as 2010, when Bill Gates and Klaus Schwab announced the decade of vaccines, that one of the first things they did in 2010 was to build a vaccine committee, only 6 or 7 people, globalists, to support the vaccine moves they were making. It was all about vaccines. That's the weapon to gain control, to gain money, to gain power. And Bill Gates put Anthony Fauci 12 years ago now on his vaccine committee of 5 or 6 international people, including at least 2 people from the UN. And then, by the way, within 2 years, 2012, he got the UN to approve his basic plan, which is this very fascist approach, which is now called the Great Reset, where you get the big globalist powers, the UN, the Communist Chinese, working with the big industries represented by Fauci. Not Fauci. Well, Fauci represents the pharmaceutical industry, but the world's industries represented by Klaus Schwab and Bill Gates. And that goes back 12 years at least. God knows how much further that we haven't been able to find yet. And these are just very, very powerful, heavily planned moves. In the book, we actually print parts of the master plan that was developed between 2015 and 2016 and published as Bill Gates' preliminary business plan. The title of this monograph, which was meant to bring in billions of dollars, which it did do, to his new organization called CEPI, was the CEPI business plan. And CEPI stands for, vaccine preparedness, basically, big vaccine preparedness plan. This was it. It was carefully worked out, and they developed and then they published the plan 2016. I'm going to be talking a lot more about this in future reports about how they took over government agencies at that time. So that'll be coming soon. And how they worked so closely from WHO. They had official legal agreement with WHO called a Memorandum of Understanding by mid 2017 that the drug companies were going to get all of their costs paid, all their costs paid, both the indirect and the direct costs. It was all set up, Operation
And we've
Warp
seen,
Speed.
obviously, no, I mean, they've largely, all these bad actors have been given immunity and not having to face any liabilities. That happened under the CARES Act, is even hospitals that are not following protocols. It's attorneys can't even intervene and help in a recent case of someone I interviewed, because they're like, well, under the CARES Act, that gives the doctors a lot of immunity. It's absolutely insane. It's so scary that we're in this place. And I wanted to bring it back to that treaty. In it, you said tucked into the report were real goals, and it says the three main purposes: response to any future pandemics, in particular by ensuring universal and equitable access to medical solutions such as vaccines, medicines, and diagnostics, a stronger international health framework with the WHO as the coordinating authority on global health matters, and the One Health approach connecting the health of humans, animals, and our planet. But the key words that stick out to me is they want to give more authority, and when they say they want equitable access, this is just virtue signaling. It sounds like for more.
Well, it's really key. It's really, really key. Remember, progressives and communists don't create anything. They divide up what other people have created.
Mm-hmm.
That's why, in order to thrive, communist China has had to infiltrate all our technology firms, Johns Hopkins University, Harvard. They're all aligned with the communists because the communists use them to suck out what we create. So they literally they steal organizations from people. They steal wealth from people. So when they say equitable, what they mean is America will have no more than anybody else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Think
keyword
about
there.
that.
Keyword
That's
there.
what it really means. Equitable means the United States will have its resources, its creativity, its inventions completely taken by the globalists, and it will be under the control of Chinese communists. And ultimately, Bill Gates, he thinks he's a big deal. He's like he's no more than a kid in short pants whimpering in the eyes of Xi Jinping.
I mean, and when they say One Health, I mean, this is bringing it back to that we're approaching medicine and science in the terms of one size fits all. Like, nope, you all have to do the same thing. Your bodies are all going to react the same way. We're not going to factor any of your specific body chemistry. I mean, this is part of the reason why this pandemic has lasted so long, according to some of the other doctors that have taken different approaches, is because we have just decided that everybody should do the same thing. Everybody gets the same thing. And, even if you've had a vaccine injury or anything in the past, shut up. We're doing everything for everybody. And if you don't do it, then you're selfish. I mean, this is what I'm getting from. And what's so scary is you talk about with the treaty that, I mean, since it's a treaty that, I mean, if it takes civil liberties away, there's basically nothing we can do about it.
Well, that's right. And in America, you're supposed to, in the United States Constitution, the Senate approves treaties, but we have clearly bypassed that. And it is very easy to see Joe Biden signing a treaty, and which would be acceptable in international law and acceptable, more than acceptable, to the World Health Organization and the United Nations, its boss. They would, all they need is a signature of Joe Biden, or the signature, this is according to their own rules, the World Health Organization Constitution, or the signature of somebody appointed by our Secretary of State to have, quote, total powers to negotiate treaties. So they don't have to bother at all with what anybody in America thinks, as long as they can get a top official to sign the treaty. And it's so easy because Joe Biden and John Kerry, who, by the way, are corrupt criminals who have made fortunes for their families, the Kerry, and we hear a lot about the Biden corruption, how their son goes and along with Joe and during his vice presidency and at other times and made tens of millions of dollars that is for the whole family, including for the big guy in one of the emails. Well, the same things happened with the Kerry family, and indeed the Biden son and the Kerry son have worked together. So we've got these corrupt criminal relationships with the communist Chinese. Kerry would be happy to be empowered to sign a treaty that gave away our health care. He hates America. He'd love to see us operating on the level of Honduras, North Korea, Cuba. If you think about it, folks, you want to know what it looks like when the communists get power and centralize things. Think of COVID-19. Think of what's happening in Canada. Think that they want to do even more to Canada and more to us. Or just think about North Korea, North Vietnam, Honduras, Cuba. I mean, that's what they have in store for us. It's a hate-filled viewpoint. When you learn to know these people and see how they have no respect for anything superior to themselves, none of them want anybody to believe in God. They don't believe, but they don't want you and I to believe in God because, it'll be like the great new song by Levy, government before God. They know it's going to be God before government. They know, in Levy's words, God before government. So they can't have any of us believing in patriotism because that means America first. That's what it means. And of course, people must put themselves first for their own growth and development and have some strength and goods with which to share with other people. And that was a big part of the spirit of America, and it still is. We're still the most generous nation in the world, despite what all the progressives want to say about us. Most generous nation in the world. And we do more charitable giving, and much of it is from the conservatives. And this, by the way, folks, I'm Jewish. I say this every time, and my wife is Christian because it's very important to recognize that the movement in the U.S., I don't know about the truckers in Canada, but the movement in the U.S. for freedom is basically a Christian movement with some God-fearing Jews in it, like me and Rish from Yale and Zev Zelenko, but it's basically a Christian, God-fearing, America-loving movement. And this is exactly what they call the despicables. And what Klaus Schwab says is what stands in the way of globalism, and it is. Be proud of yourself. Be proud of being a despicable. Mm-hmm. Be proud of believing in uplifting, powerful ideas like freedom. Nowhere in any of this stuff we showed you today, nor in any of their documents, any of these documents we're using excerpts from, is there mention of individual rights. Nowhere is there mention of freedom. Nowhere is there mention of political liberty. That should tell you everything. There is no belief in the fundamental founding principles of what I believe is America and Western civilization. There is nothing. They have eradicated the founding of America, democracy. They've eradicated the principle of constitutional government. There is just no question that this is a steamroller of destructive evil that is descending on the world.
Absolutely. And we want to make sure that everybody reads this report. So you say it can be found on America Out Loud. Is that americaoutloud.com?
That's right. Ginger and I, we are now blogging on both our own website, bregan.com, and we are first putting things up on America Out Loud. And in this, probably the second week of April, Ginger and I are going to have a weekly radio show on America Out Loud, which will be, I think at this point, it's going to be called COVID-19 and Beyond. So we're looking forward to that. We're working with Malcolm, who has his own show on America Out Loud. It's his station. He's Malcolm Out Loud. And,
well, we're going to be all going to be out loud because we're all angry.
That's
right. We're seeing what's happening. They don't barely try to hide it anymore. But when you see things, scary things like this, I mean, global efforts, it makes you feel small and think, well, what can I possibly do? So what can we do with this information? Is the most important thing just to get it out there?
Well, get our book out. And we've donated, we had a stock of books in Canada. We've donated 70 books to the truckers and through people we work with. We are distributing them in Canada for free. We're happy to do that to really good organizations. I hope this just doesn't flood us and use up all our books, but we are happy to get books for free to the right places.
Hmm.
But buy the books, support us, enable us to give these books out and to get them into the world. And it discusses what we have to do. We have to really decide to reclaim America and reclaim ourselves. We have to reclaim America, reclaim ourselves. And we have to do it on whatever level we're comfortable with. A Ginger, for example, is not comfortable going on TV. I've rarely gotten her on with me. That's okay. She's a brilliant support person. And now, after many, many years, she's going to do radio with me. Work your own way up to do the things you want to do. And besides, what you do in your local community could be the most important thing you ever do in your life. And you might, in your own local community, do more good than somebody who doesn't quite do good on a higher level. So at your school board, with your teachers, with your friends, with your local American organizations that really put America first and freedom first above all things for us, not above God, but not above love, but freedom as the really the playing field for equality and productivity and creativity. But you got to have love and you got to have God in it. It doesn't work by itself.
Absolutely.
And takes a matrix, but do things personally. Get out there, make sure the elections are going to be adequately supervised. Stand up for supervised elections. There's so much. Do your own blog. Start collecting information. There's just so much we can do. Write your own.
Get past
your
censorship. Just start delivering things right by hand. Get a carrier pigeon if you have to.
Oh my God.
We got to get this information out.
Well, and support individual groups. Let's support Christy Lee and support Mike Lindell's new TV station that I appear on, usually 4 or 5 times a month. Well, 3 or 4 times a month. I'm probably on that station, and we have our own TV station now. We are
on Brighteon, right?
We're on Brankion.
Brighteon,
and
yeah.
Brighteon, 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 Brighteon.com. We found that as soon as we lost YouTube, we immediately we had 45,000 connections on YouTube, and when we lost it, we very quickly got 45,000 connections on our main way of broadcasting ourselves and telling people about ourselves, which is our free frequent alerts. Get our frequent alerts from Bregan.com. Get the book from Bregan.com, or if you wanted at a discount, a discount on Bregan.com, but go to We Are the Prey. It's our best way of getting books out to you, or go get them on Amazon or some other place. But when possible, go local and work with individual new organizations. By the way, Christy, Amazon was so threatening to us. They kept threatening us, so we stopped putting anything up and we waited. And they didn't threaten us anymore. We didn't put anything up. And then I put up the video, Ginger put up the video of me announcing the book, COVID-19, The Global Predators. In 45 minutes or less, they took us down permanently.
Wow.
Of announcing the book.
So thank you. On Amazon?
No, YouTube.
Oh, YouTube.
YouTube.
So when you made your book,
Amazon has not been doing that. Amazon, they started to do that. And Elon Musk intervene to tell them you shouldn't be doing this. When they tried to take down a book, and that was amazing. Thank you, Elon Musk. And,
wow. Yeah, it's crazy. There's been some surprising people that have come up and defended liberty as well. So that's nice to see.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Dr. Bregan. Make sure that you read this very important article just breaking about the New World Health Order, at least their attempts to bring us into a global takeover of our health. And that is on America Out Loud right now. America Out Loud, make sure you get that. Make sure you go to Bregan.com. Make sure you follow Dr. Bregan everywhere. And I just got to say, you are so inspiring because you don't quit. Christy. You don't quit. And, if you at 85 can just be not quitting and continuing to research and get this information out there. I mean, what is anybody else's excuse? We all got to do our part. So thank you for being an inspiration. All right. Well, that's all I got, all the time I have, but thank you again for coming on.
Thank you, Christy Lee. Thank you.
Two life-changing, life-empowering products are now back in stock after being sold out for months at InfoWarsStore.com. Winter Sun is the highest quality organic vitamin D3 taken under the tongue. It also has vitamin K, critical for your immune system, and so much more. It's 50% off, despite the fact it's going to sell out very, very quickly because everybody needs this. Old, young, black, white, it doesn't matter. You need what's in Winter Sun. And then we have Brain Force Ultra, super fast acting, amazing, clean, nootropic system that is a complement to Brain Force Plus and, of course, Turbo Force. All three of these are different formulas, but all three of them take your mind and take your focus and clarity and alertness to the next level. It is 40% off at InfoWarsStore.com for a limited time. Thank you all for your support. If you haven't tried these products, you really need to because they are amazing. InfoWarsStore.com.